Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
On today's program, we're completing a two-week series we call a travelogue, and last week we went to Thailand, and this week we're going to Cambodia, and we have our wonderful friend as our guest, Dr. Virginia Tinsley Johnson, who chairs the North Idaho College Division of Communications, Fine Arts, and Humanities. Our guest holds degrees from 3 universities, her BA from the College of Idaho, her master's from the University of Idaho, and her doctorate from Idaho State University. Our guest has been on this program a number of times. We have annual book review programs that she's on, and also she is a Chautauqua performer, and she has done Mary Wollstonecraft and been on here a number of times. Virginia, it's such a pleasure to always have you here. And last week was just wonderful, and we had a lot of visuals. We have a lot of visuals this week, and we know the viewers will enjoy the trip to Cambodia.
Thanks, Tony.
And as always, I'm pleased to have our regular panelist, Erna Reinhardt, who is the Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College, and Erna will commence today's questioning.
Thanks, Tony. Welcome back to the show, Virginia. Today we're speaking about your trip to Cambodia, and you went there between December and January, so they were having summer while we were having winter here. But share with us what your perceptions were. Did it meet your expectations? Was it different than what you thought it was going to be? Share with us what was your memory like?
I guess I would say that I'm not bragging, but I've been to a lot of countries in the world, and Cambodia did what I've been telling people is a sort of shift in my soul, a shift in my spirit. And I think that was because I was in a country that I had read about and heard about. Anyone who remembers the Vietnam War and has seen the killing fields knows some of the horrors under Pol Pot. And our tour guide, Sote, was a survivor of Pol Pot, and his mother was a good cook, and that was the reason he was allowed to live. But he told us about his life and about being trained to kill and about his never-ending hunger, even though he has enough to eat. And then to see the third world poverty in that country, as well as in Siem Reap, which is where we stayed, $200 a night hotels, just right next to the killing fields. I mean, he told us many of the places where the killing had gone on. And to feel the need to help people there and to understand the struggles they'd been up against, and to still question why, so they would say, did Pol Pot kill our own people? And then the beauty of the temples there, the beauty of the lake, and the great smiles of the little children. And I'm sounding like sort of the American who knows everything, and I don't mean that. I mean it just puts things into perspective as how fortunate we are where we live.
How big is Cambodia, and how much of it were you able to see in 4 days?
Well, we didn't see very much because we were only there about 5 days, and so we saw just a small portion of the country. I think it's about as big as Connecticut, but I could be wrong. I'm sure some of our viewers will be gasping when they hear my ignorance on the geography, but I haven't really thought about that. We were mostly in Siem Reap, which is near the largest lake in Asia, the Tonle Sap Lake. And we're in that area because we went to Angkor Wat and the other temple areas around there. So it was very limited. I would love to go back. I would love to go back to Cambodia and go to the coast and go to Phnom Penh and see the mountain country and so on.
Great.
As we did last week, we're going to give a gift to our viewers. We're going to take them on the trip visually.
Okay.
And so at this point, we'll ask our staff to put up the slides that you brought, and we'll go through them.
Okay. I guess this is sort of the tail end of the trip to Thailand, so let me talk about this. This was a folk show that we went to, and these are the young people who are avoiding being smashed by bamboo sticks that are being slapped together as they dance in and out of those squares to music that's played on traditional instruments. And you're holding your breath the whole time going, oh, step now, and none of them got a broken ankle. So that was as I said, near the end of our trip, which was in Chiang Mai in Thailand, northern Thailand. And the next slide is modern children, not dancing, but playing video games in a 4-story building that was filled with technology. This is where I got my camera that I had drop fixed by a wonderful young man who managed to unstick the shutter. But this is a child riding down the escalator, and that's an office max. You can see office written sideways. All the things in Thai there, so, but you can still find your super glue, even though it's written in Thai. So that was that. And then sort of the final shot was we had a farewell dinner at a restaurant on the lake, or on the river there in Chiang Mai, and did a traditional Thai thing, which is these enormous paper balloons with candles in the bottom, and then you pour your blessings and your wishes, kind of like 3 coins in the fountain, on them, and then let go, and then they rise and keep going and going up into the sky. It's really a beautiful tradition.
It is, isn't it?
So that was our farewell. So we flew from there to Bangkok and then to Siem Reap, and this is probably the best known temple complex in the world. This is Angkor Wat, and that is I standing there with my purse, by the way, which has been painted, and I can show that in Chiang Mai by an artist with an orchid, and the big reflecting pool. And it is 90 plus degrees, and that was probably something like January 8th or 9th. So you were all freezing while I was not.
What an incredible view.
It is. And these are some of the remarkable carvings. There are war scenes, there are dancing girls. I have a rubbing that was taken off this temple of some of these beautiful dancing girls. These are temples that were both Hindu and Buddhist, so they do contain images out of both of those religions, and built from the 12th, 13th, 14th century. And so these young ladies who are dancing on the wall are followed in the next slide by these absolutely gorgeous little Cambodian girls who were visiting the temple with their parents. And I just wanted to bring them home too. They were just so darn cute with their frilly socks and colorful clothing. And the little girl who has the scarf I'll talk about in a minute. This is one of the other temples in the complex, and these are people coming down. I have just come down from these very steep steps. We are using a handrail. Going up, there were no handrails on the other side of this temple, but there are Buddhists inside upstairs in this huge temple, and of course there were no handrails when the people worshipped there originally. And the next slide is probably one of the most photographed sites in the world, are certainly here in the Angkor Temple area. This is Ta Prohm, and this is a huge banyan tree which over time has grown down over the temple, and that's my husband Graydon and me standing there in front of these gigantic banyan roots.
Just incredibly large.
They're enormous, yes. So it's
Took
best
a long
to have somebody.
time.
A long time, and for years no one knew they were here because they were all covered by jungle. All these temples were,
yes.
and we were warned not to get off the track because there are landmines still out in this area. And the next slide shows, in fact, some victims of landmines. This is an orchestra put together with landmine victims, and I think we'll be hearing some of their music at the end of the show. They had CDs for sale, $10, and you'll be hearing the music actually played by this very orchestra that I bought that CD from. Still in the temple area in Ta Prohm, these are these gigantic faces of the gods, and this carving in their huge blocks are facing all 4 directions, and they're very beatific and peaceful looking and very large. Probably we might be about as tall as from the lower lip to the throat there on that. That's how huge they are. The next picture is a series of 3 that are my favorites for really interesting phenomena. This is a fishing village out from Siem Reap, and the people are having moving day. And so here on the back of this truck is one of their houses. It's a hut, and I'm taking this out the front of the bus, so you'll see that. And here comes the little house with the people still inside. So as they're moving on the back of the flatbed, they are just staying in the truck or staying in their house. And here they go, hi there, as we're looking out the window at them, and they're passing by with all their earthly goods on the back of the truck on moving day. So I thought that was just such a difference from the way most of us move with many trucks and boxes. They just move the whole house. The next picture is of the river that's going into the Sonley Tok Sop Lake, and these are the houses that people live in. They're boat houses, and you'll notice there's a TV antenna sticking up out of one of those. And we had a discussion about whether these people knew how impoverished they were, and were they happy. And I said, if they have television sets, they know what the rest of the world looks like. So they have diesel and gasoline powered generators that they have. If they have enough money, they gather that from fishing. These are fishing villages. And this smelled very fishy here because they were bringing their fish from in the lake into the river and then dumping them into what looked like the big truck trailer of a tractor trailer, and then they make fish paste out of that. Our guide said, you know, when you get out of the bus, it will smell very fishy, and you will probably think that doesn't smell good, but to me, it smells like dinner. He said, imagine if you were cooking toast in your house, you'd like that smell, and that's what this smells like to me. And it wasn't unpleasant, it was just very fishy. The next picture has to do with the gifts that our group bought for the children. We had given away some school supplies in Thailand, and so we went to a shop in Siem Reap, and everybody just knew they wanted to help these people. So we bought pens and paper and books and soccer balls, and I even brought a couple of the pens along to show you here in a minute if you want me to, made in China, and gave away these, plus all the shampoo and soap and toothpaste we could garner from our own, and with a little help of the hotel. They may not have known how much they helped us, but we did bring soap and shampoo and lotion to these people who had none of that, and gave that to the mothers, and then we gave the school supplies to the children. So that's me looking down and pulling out of the bag all the things I want to give. Here are some children who live in one of the fishing villages out along the lake, and they are going to school, we found out. And this is very deep water, and you will notice these children have nothing as resembling a life jacket, and there aren't any people tut-tutting about them. They just say, okay. And we have just given them some of the books and pens that we had left over, and so they're looking those over and comparing notes, and one little kid's waving at us, and the little girl is poling along as they're floating back down toward, away from the school, because they came up to our boat and got these things from us. This last slide is the one that is the heart tugger for me. This is my call back to to Cambodia. We had just given many things to these children. The little boy on the left is holding some pencils and a book, and the little girl on the right has a book, and the little boy behind her has some pencils, and the little girl who is standing with the green shorts has nothing, and she is looking up at the bus where we are driving away and crying because she missed out. And her mother has on the traditional scarf, which I brought one. These checkered scarves are worn by Cambodians as scarves, headdresses, neckties, and everything. But that little child is still in my heart.
That is very, very touching. And you're a wonderful, wonderful ambassador from the United States, taking all of those gifts to them. And they, in turn, were also very generous. It's just the way that interchanges should be. In the 1950s, we started something called People to People program. Dwight Eisenhower started that, and many things like this are happening now. Before we go back to Erna, I want you to show a couple other things. Your incense burner here, that is just so intricate, and it's just beautiful.
Yes, this is an item actually I got in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, as we were leaving, and I was looking for something to bring home to my son, who likes strange objects. And so in the night market in Chiang Mai, I found this. A friend had said, did you see the incense burners that are dragons? So you take off the lid, and there's a little cone of incense. You light it, and along the backside there are two little, well, they're on all sides, I guess, little vent holes. And then from the dragon's mouth, when you light the incense, the smoke pours out, puffs out like Puff the Magic Dragon. And it's all carved and very intricate.
Intricate in detail.
Yes.
The scarf you're wearing, that's from Cambodia.
Yes,
too?
it is. Actually, I bought this in a market in Siem Reap. And this was a market that just had people with big pans, flat pans with about an inch of water with fish still living, and eels and heaps of sandals and fruit, and it was just, I loved it. It was just a sensory overload, but they had hanging down from hooks all along these stalls, these beautiful scarves, and I was with some friends. They were going, hurry up, we've got to get back, our tuk-tuk is leaving, we got to go, and so I just grabbed this off and said, I like that one, how much? And this time I didn't bargain, so I got it, and I have worn this scarf almost every day. It's this really beautiful fabric and great intricate designs. So I have that, and then I mentioned this other scarf. So I thought I would bring this container. Everything I bought practically in Cambodia came in these beautiful woven little containers. No plastic sacks or paper or plastic, any of that, but these great woven things. And we were given this as a gift from our guide, Sothé. And this checkered pattern is very typical. with a beautiful fringe in kind of a contrasting color. And as I said, they wore them around their necks, around their heads. I can't do it anyway as gorgeously as they do. And very special to me to have this from him especially.
I think it's so gifted that they're so more creative.
Yes.
That's wonderful,
Right.
compared with the plastic bag.
Yes. And we did have plastic bags, but I don't know what else you want me to show, Tony. But
I wish, before we go back to the bag here where they put on
Oh, yes. Well, I have two bags. Again,
Yes.
this one came from, I didn't get to talk about this last time, about this bag that I got in a small village up the Maycock River, where I saw women sitting on the sidewalk making these bags and sewing on all the beads, and then along the edges are these coins. And just sitting and chatting and putting together these beautiful bags with intricate stitchery that you see along here, and then
Just amazing.
the coins and the elephants.
And the elephants.
And all the long beads along.
Yeah, that's
One of my
great.
treasures. This is the purse that I have on all the time in every picture. It's my travel bag. And in it, you can get a lot in this bag, I'll tell you. But when we went to an umbrella factory in Chiang Mai, they were making umbrellas. They started with making the paper and then drying the fabric and putting them on the parasols, on the frames, and then painting them and decorating them. And they had people sitting around a big open area, and they had artists there who were decorating the umbrellas. And then for a small fee, you could choose a design and they would paint it on fabric. And so I had this orchid painted on my purse.
That's great.
It's a great treasure for me.
Erna Reinhardt.
Virginia, share with us, please, what your accommodations were like, and
Oh.
and not only where you stayed, but what kind of accommodations are available, and whether there's what kind of budget
Okay.
you would need to stay somewhere.
They have everything in both Thailand and Cambodia, but I'll speak specifically to Cambodia. One of the marks of the growth of this country, and the tourism especially in Siem Reap, is that Sote told us that 13 years ago there was very little traffic or very few people living in Siem Reap. It was just a little town. They still have only one stoplight there, but they have no road rage, and they have trucks and tuk-tuks and bicycles, and nobody gets angry. Someone said that's because they're Buddhists. But they also just let everyone go. But they now have, and the other part of that story was that little children would chase after cars to smell the exhaust because they liked it and it was so rare. But now they have something like 200 plus hotels plus guest places. So you can stay there for $5 a night, or you can stay there for $200 a night, or any place in between. Of course, we were with a package deal, and I think our hotel was about $60 a night overall. And then that our package included breakfast every time, and then often lunch, or we would pay for lunch on our own and go to dinner. And you could choose the range of what you wanted to pay for meals. You know, you could do $5 or $25. And then alcohol was a choice you could make or not. They have their own Angkor beer there in Cambodia, or Pepsi, or no. My husband likes root beer. He was disappointed. That was the one thing they didn't have was root beer. So when we got back to the Siem Reap airport and we found a Dairy Queen and they had root beer, he was quite excited that he got his root beer. The accommodations were fantastic. Before we went on this trip, and I would give this as advice to travelers, is to go online and look up the hotels and see if they really are what they say they are. And these were all 4-star hotels, and in Chiang Mai we stayed in a 5-star hotel. Swimming pools, massages. I did have massages that were really quite reasonable. Not the hanky-panky massage, as our guide in Thailand warned us against, but really wonderful qualified masseuses who came to the hotel, or you could go to them. And so you could choose that. One of my favorite places to eat actually this was in Thailand, was a noodle shop where they had pad thai for like $2, and it was excellent. Really fresh ingredients, I would say that's the other thing. But back to the hotels there. They all turned out, with the exception of the place I think I mentioned last week about the bad breakfast. They had wonderful food and very comfortable beds, very clean, no bugs. I was surprised we took insect repellent because we'd been warned about malaria and so on, and I didn't see any sign of any of that.
One final question before we go back to Tony. Share with us a little bit about the natural resources of the country.
Oh, okay. I guess I would pick out just one thing to tell you about. I mean, these are rich countries, many natural resources, and one of the most desirable ones is in Cambodia. There's oil under the lake there that we were there, and apparently there are countries vying for the drilling rights, and the Japanese being among them. I'm sure the Americans are after that too. And the concern that our guide had is that that is a fishing-based country pretty much, especially that area, and that they're very, very fearful that if there's drilling in the lake, the Tonle Sap Lake for oil, that it could have a disaster that could ruin the whole economy because of this enormous lake there. So a lot of that, and then of course logging to some degree. We were allowed to take a small piece of teak out of Cambodia. My husband's cousin likes to carve, and not allowed out of Thailand. And they do have teak farms. They're trying to raise teak because there's been such a decimation of that crop. But a lot of rice in both countries. We saw much rice growing. Fishing with hand nets. We got some really great pictures of people in this really muddy, murky-looking water, throwing out their nets and bringing in fish and frogs and eels, and so quite a bit of subsistence dwelling. But we also went to pineapple ranches there, farms, so a lot of agriculture.
Great.
Like many countries, there's a mixture between the rich
Oh,
environment and
absolutely.
the poor. As you interacted with the people, and you've talked about what the economy is and the fishing and the agriculture and all, and I assume people have some free time. And of course, the poorer you are, the more you have to work long hours. But what are some of the pastimes for the people of Cambodia?
What I would observe is that a lot of the people live in the villages outside of Siem Reap, and I can only speak from what I saw, and that many of them traditionally, like in so many poor countries, I mean, the growth of the city. So we would see pickups with, I'd say 30 people packed into the bed of this pickup that were coming into the town to work in the tourist industry, in the hotels and the restaurants there, in the market, and then at the end of the day they would get in the trucks and they would go back out and then they would farm. One of the things that I noticed there that they didn't, I don't think this is a pastime because they probably didn't have much time, but because there's a lot of flooding there, the roads are in kind of bad shape, but they build up little dikes out in front of their houses, so they trap the water and the fish. And so you'd see these shrinking pools with these fish, and at one place we actually were close enough to see the mouths of the fish gulping for air out of these kind of muddy little ponds. But that's their fish supply, and they kept those and everything. And we saw them riding bicycles. Of course, that's part of the way they get around as well. I didn't get a sense that they have a lot of leisure time because it's, as you said, really kind of a hard living.
They just brought up on screen, and that was my next question.
Oh, okay.
Some other items that you have displaying here, if you would take us through those.
Okay, a couple of these things are from the end of the trip in Thailand. On the left there, you see a bag that's has a lot of elephant designs on it. This was a big zipper bag I bought so I could start storing my treasures. In the middle is a marionette that I bought in Mae Sai, which is the northernmost town in
That is
Thailand,
really impressive,
and it's a very beautiful hand-beaded, decorated marionette. It's probably a character out of the Ramayana, which I can't tell you which character that is. But also there's, down in the front, some embroidery on a tablecloth I bought in Laos from, it's a Hmong, from the Hmong tribe there. And the long tube there is actually a mailing tube that I bought this rubbing of one of the dancing women on the walls there, and I said, okay, I'll bargain, I'll buy this for this much if you'll give me a mailing tube, thinking I'd get a cardboard box or something. And again, here's this work of art. Behind that is my t-shirt that I bought. It says Laos, and then it also has a golden triangle. And that's another eerie feeling for those of us who remember Vietnam and the Golden Triangle. And our guide tried to tell us, oh no, they don't have any more drug traffic. And we all went, oh, sure. So the Golden Triangle was golden because of its agriculture and crops and so on, according to the guide. But
Erna Reinhardt.
if you went through the countryside, I'm curious as to whether or not you saw houses and whether or not you were able to meet any families. And if you were, did they live together as extended families, and what were their houses like?
In Cambodia, the houses, many of them are on stilts because of the flooding. And I do sense that there are extended families there. In fact, our guide lives with his mother who is not well, and his wife, and he has 3 sons. So I'm sure they live in extended families. One of the sad things, though, is that there is such a gigantic chunk taken out of the population that sometimes there isn't the middle generation. You know, there are people who are off killed, and so they're little kids. And both Chai and Sote, the guide in Thailand and Cambodia, talked about how they were trying to do work with birth control, especially in Cambodia, but because of the massacre there of the millions of people, people are just saying, we're going to have children. They are the hope. They are hope for the future. And all different kinds of dwelling. Again, there's very wealthy people with the gates closed, and then what you saw with, you can carry your house in the back of a truck. And that was one of the nicer huts we saw. Some of them don't have any roofs. The one picture that I had, I forgot to point out that there's a little pot of geraniums out in front of this just awful little place, just trying for some kind of beauty. Often they're very cleanly swept out in front, and you can see the grandma with the baby in the lap, and yeah, so.
I know that you saw, and you had some photographs that we don't have time to do on this program, but from the killings that took place and the mines that are still there. There were a lot of people you saw that were injured from the mines.
Yes.
I know Princess Di, that was something that she was working on at her death that she was so concerned about.
That's correct.
And I know that touched you very much, and that stays with you.
It does. It does.
Well, Virginia Johnson, thank you so much for being with us last week and visiting Thailand, and this week Cambodia. What a powerful 2 shows, and what a great person you are, and what a great friend, and such an intellect. And I wanted to say to the viewers something I didn't say this time. Last time, to show your great qualities, that you were chosen as the Professor of the Year, United States-wide, a few years ago for community colleges, and we're so lucky to have you at North Idaho College and all that you contribute. And good luck in everything you do.
Thank you, Tony.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just so much enjoyed bringing you these 2 programs, and one on Thailand and one on Cambodia with our good friend, Dr. Virginia Tinsley Johnson. And as we go off the air in a minute, you'll hear some music from her trip that she brought back with her, and I hope you'll be with us again next week at this same time. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.